Imagine, June 30th, 1944. Deep night over the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. At 15,000 feet, two mighty Pratt & Whitney radial engines thunder in the pitch black, lifting 4,000 horsepower of United States engineering might into the sky. The crew in the cockpit intently listens to ground control's instructions. Quote They immediately turn to intercept their prey, a Japanese A-1E bomber. On a routine night raid, utterly unaware, it has become the object of a relentless hunt. This was the Northrop P-61 Black Widow, a twin-engine giant with a 66-foot wingspan, operated by a three-person crew. It possessed something no other fighter of its era did: radar, quote 3, capable of piercing even the densest darkness. The paradox, however, was that the U.S. Army Air Force's High Command initially rejected this aircraft. They called it superfluous, insufficiently effective, and too slow. Quote 4 were the verdicts, but in reality, the enemy couldn't detect what they couldn't hear. No engine whisper, no searchlight beam, not a single warning, just 4 20mm cannons and 4 50-caliber machine guns suddenly materializing from the night shadow at point-blank range. Each of us has at some point faced a situation where our ideas, projects, or even ourselves seemed superfluous, too bold, or simply useless to someone else. But the story of the P-61 Black Widow proves that true value often hides where it's least expected, and the genuine potential can overcome any skepticism. How was this possible? How did an aircraft, rejected by its own command, become an invincible predator of the night sky? What exactly made its seemingly inefficient design the key to dominating the pitch black? And why were those who dismissed it as worthless so profoundly wrong in their judgments? In this video, we'll unveil the true, intriguing history of the Black Widow, exploring the key aspects that transformed it from an object of ridicule into a legend of the Pacific. Prepare to discover how a controversial project became a ghost ruling the night, destroying 127 enemy aircraft by war's end, whose crews never even realized death had found them. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. That very night of June 30th, 1944, was far more than just another combat episode over the vast Pacific. It was the culmination of nearly 3 years of fierce debate that had raged at the highest levels of the U.S. Army Air Force's command. As Lieutenant Herman Ainst settled into the snug pilot's seat of his P-61 Black Widow, call sign Moon Happy, he carried not only the burden of Guadalcanal's tropical humidity, but also the invisible weight of institutional skepticism. This feeling of doubt and distrust towards their machine, shared by many influential figures, was a constant backdrop to their service. Beside Ernst, hunched over the ominously green glow of the SCR-720 radar system screen, was radar operator Lieutenant Edward Copsill. His gaze was fixed on the cathode ray tube, where electronic ghosts flickered. Phantoms that were, in fact, real aircraft moving through the darkness for miles around. Behind them, in the upper turret, Staff Sergeant Raymond Mooney kept his 50-caliber Browning machine guns ready, prepared at any moment to supplement the firepower of the 4 20mm Hispano cannons neatly integrated into the aircraft's belly. This three-man crew, a living embodiment, bore the full weight of criticism leveled against the American night fighter doctrine. General Hoyt Vandenberg, just weeks prior, at a heated Pentagon briefing, had emphatically declared, quote 11, the British de Havilland Mosquito, light, wooden, incredibly fast, and already having proven its exceptional effectiveness in night combat over Europe, seemed the antithesis of the P-61, while an empty Mosquito weighed just 11,000 pounds. A fully equipped 1-piece quote to tipped the scales at a hefty 23,000 pounds. If the Mosquito effortlessly reached 400 miles per hour in level flight, the P-61 struggled to squeeze out 365 miles per hour at optimal altitude. Here we see a clear contradiction. Speed and lightness versus massiveness and perceived clumsiness. But how, then, could the Black Widow be effective? The answer lies not in superficial characteristics, but in the deep, innovative philosophy of its creator, Jack Northrop, who thought completely differently. Stay with us and watch until the end, because next we'll discover how these apparent disadvantages actually became advantages. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. Jack Northrop, however, approached the creation of his aircraft with a completely different, revolutionary philosophy. The twin boom design wasn't merely a stylistic choice. It was a functional necessity dictated by strategic objectives. The central nacelle, housing the crew and all weapon systems, was engineered so that the two powerful Pratt & Whitney RR-2800 engines were positioned far enough apart. This engineering solution significantly minimized critical asymmetric thrust problems should one engine fail, which was vital in night combat. The radar antenna, occupying the entire nose cone, was perfectly integrated without interfering with propeller rotation. But the most crucial advantage lay in the aircraft's sheer size. Its impressive dimensions provided an enormous fuel capacity that the British Mosquito simply couldn't compete with. 646 gallons compared to its opponent's 460 gallons meant significantly greater range and patrol endurance. It was at this moment, as Ernst and his crew continued their flight, that ground intercept control re-established contact via headset. Moon happy. Vector 09D, climb to altitude 20. Target approaching from Rabaul. Presumed Betty-class bomber. Likely carrying torpedoes for Henderson Field. Tension mounted, and every element of the P-61's design now had to prove its worth. Japanese forces had been systematically conducting these grueling night raids for months, harassing American bases. Solitary bombers skillfully slipped through the cover of darkness to drop their deadly payloads on American installations. Previous intercept attempts, using P-38 and F-6F Hellcat fighters, also equipped with radar, had invariably ended in failure. Japanese pilots were masters of their craft, knowing precisely how to use terrain features and sudden altitude changes to successfully break radar contact and disappear. And now, at this critical juncture, Copseal's voice sharply crackled over the intercom, breaking the silence. Contact, azimuth, ZU-85, range 12 miles, altitude 18, course south-southeast. He's threading right through a narrow gap between two storm cells. This moment demanded not only piloting skill, but also an exceptional understanding of the radar picture, a hallmark of Black Widow crews. Radar operator Copseal's fingers danced expertly across the controls, finely adjusting gain and sweep patterns to ensure the elusive target was never lost for a second. This was a true art distinguishing genuinely successful night fighter crews from those who merely swelled anonymous statistics. They were capable of reading these electronic #90, mentally reconstructing the complex three-dimensional geometry of an intercept in absolute darkness. In response to the report, Ernst decisively pushed the throttles forward, instantly feeling the two radial engines respond with a powerful rising roar. The superchargers emitted a characteristic whine, feeding compressed air into the cylinders, with each engine delivering over 200 horsepower. The aircraft steadily and relentlessly gained altitude in the thin tropical air. Its fuel gauges, despite the immense consumption, dropping with surprising, measured precision. It was range and endurance, not instantaneous speed, impressive to airshow spectators, that proved crucial in the merciless night battles over the Pacific. #20 Kopsil reported, his voice tense. #21. The Japanese pilot, relying on dead reckoning and antiquated celestial navigation, had no idea that advanced American radar technology had been tracking him from the moment he crossed the 100-mile mark. The strategic advantage was undeniably entirely with the hunters. At 18,000 feet, Ernst began his meticulously calculated intercept approach, carefully reducing throttle to avoid overshooting the target. And here, another brilliant feature of the P-61 became apparent. Its radar signature was minimal, despite its impressive size. This was yet another Northrop design decision that paid enormous dividends in real combat. The unique twin-boom configuration effectively dispersed radar reflections, making the Namamu #23 appear much smaller to enemy detection equipment. Of course, the Japanese bomber simply lacked intercept radar, and their night navigation depended entirely on visual landmarks and radio beacons that American intelligence had long and successfully compromised. #24. Kopsil announced, his voice calm but tense. #25. This invisible predator, born from skepticism, was ready to deliver its lethal strike, confirming that true power lies not in what is seen, but in what cannot be detected. What if we told you that a plane meant to be obsolete ultimately changed the course of history? Imagine a night where darkness is your only ally, and the enemy is invisible. How did the crew manage this deadly dance? And why, despite all obstacles, did this aircraft become a symbol of hope? Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. In the thick of the critical night intercept phase, with success or failure mere moments away, Ernst meticulously analyzed tactical reports from European squadrons. He grasped the intricacies of how German crews masterfully exploited darkness and the element of surprise to deliver devastating blows against RAF Bomber Command. The principles were universal. Approach from below or behind, maintain radar contact until visual acquisition at the closest possible range, then open fire. The Japanese #28 bomber suddenly appeared in Ernst's gun sight, just 600 yards away. Its two engines were clearly silhouetted against the vast starry sky. The Japanese pilot maintained a straight and level flight, completely unaware that death was approaching from the 7 o'clock position. Ernst's finger slid to the trigger. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns were ready to unleash over 3,000 rounds per minute, representing concentrated firepower. This was the very moment for which Northrop's design philosophy was conceived and Ernst's crew trained. The P-61 was not intended for daytime dogfights or high-altitude interception of enemy fighters. It was purpose-built for precisely this scenario, finding invisible enemies in the bottomless dark and destroying them before they could complete their missions. The institutional critics who doubted its necessity had never flown combat missions where success meant protecting thousands of sleeping Marines from bombs they would never see. The Betty's wings erupted in flames as Ernst's burst struck its fuel tanks and engine components. The Japanese aircraft rolled over and began its final dive toward the Pacific, taking with it both crew and ordnance that would never reach Henderson Field. For Lieutenant Ernst, this victory meant more than just another kill mark on his aircraft's fuselage. It proved that the Hanasan .30 Black Widow could deliver on its promise when the stakes were highest. By early July 1944, the first operational P-61 squadrons had established themselves on opposite sides of the globe, each facing radically different tactical challenges. In the Pacific, from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, the 6th Night Fighter Squadron operated, their black aircraft carefully hidden under camouflage nets during daylight hours. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron began operations from Scorton Airfield in Yorkshire, preparing for the night battles that would determine the outcome of the air war over occupied Europe. The contrast between the theaters of war became evident within the first weeks of operational deployment. Pacific missions demanded extended patrols over vast ocean expanses, hunting individual Japanese bombers approaching American installations under cover of darkness. European operations, by contrast, required an entirely different tactical approach. Intercepting formations of German transport aircraft, evacuating personnel from advancing Allied ground forces, or pursuing the elusive V-1 flying bombs that terrorized London throughout the summer. Lieutenant Ernst's success over Guadalcanal garnered significant attention within night fighter circles, but also exposed a fundamental contradiction between the aircraft's capabilities and institutional expectations. The P-61's 400-mile combat radius provided Pacific crews with the necessary endurance for extended patrols. However, its maximum speed of 365 miles per hour at 20,000 feet remained a constant source of criticism among the Air Force High Command. This speed limitation became critically apparent on the night of July 15th, when Lieutenant Robert Anderson of the 402nd Night Fighter Squadron attempted to intercept a V-1 flying bomb over the English Channel. Anderson's radar operator, Technical Sergeant William Hayes, achieved perfect intercept geometry, positioning their Quote-Thrasings directly behind the German missile as it sped towards London at 350 miles per hour. The P-61 could match this speed, but only with difficulty and at the cost of structural integrity. As Anderson pushed his aircraft to maximum speed in a shallow dive, the nose cone began to deform under aerodynamic pressure. The plexiglass radar housing, designed for typical combat speeds rather than extreme intercept scenarios, flexed and cracked as air currents created unexpected pressure differentials. Within seconds, the entire nose section exploded, destroying the SCR-720 radar system and leaving a gaping hole in the aircraft's forward fuselage. Hayes managed to maintain intercept data long enough for Anderson to fire a burst from the belly-mounted cannons, but the V-1 continued its program flight towards London. The damaged Black Widow returned to base with its radar system completely destroyed, its crew sobered by the realization that the aircraft had fundamental limitations in high-speed intercept scenarios. This incident provided ammunition for critics who argued that the P-61 represented flawed design priorities. However, these same limitations proved insignificant during typical night fighter missions, where success depended more on persistence and precision than on sheer speed. Throughout August and September, Pacific-based Black Widows began steadily accumulating aerial victories against Japanese night raiders. The 6th Night Fighter Squadron's operations log for this period recorded 17 confirmed kills, with crews consistently demonstrating the aircraft's ability to detect, track, and destroy enemy bombers operating under optimal evasion conditions. The tactical doctrine that emerged from these early successes emphasized the P-61's unique capabilities rather than attempts to compensate for its perceived shortcomings. Imagine, you've created a masterpiece, a weapon capable of changing the course of a war. You've poured all your knowledge, blood, and sweat into it, and now, at the peak of its power, it becomes useless, not due to defeat, but because of its own overwhelming victory. Sounds like a cruel twist of fate, doesn't it? How is such a thing even possible? And what does it say about the paradoxes of war, where success can lead to obsolescence? We've often seen great ideas and inventions confront harsh reality. Perhaps you, like many of us, have felt that disappointment when your hard work, your passion, suddenly lost relevance despite all its effectiveness. Today, we'll tell you a story that will make you ponder the cost of triumph. The story of the P-61 Black Widow, a night fighter that was so good it simply eliminated its own mission. Stay with us and watch until the end to uncover all the details of this astonishing story. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. In the pitch black, where ordinary vision was useless, Black Widow crews honed unique tactics. They mastered the art of invisible pursuit, approaching enemy targets from below and behind. The aircraft's onboard radar became their sole eye, allowing them to maintain constant contact while the .41 round themselves remained beyond the enemy's visual detection. The twin-boom fuselage design, initially considered unusual, provided the aircraft with minimal radar visibility from a frontal aspect. This gave the P-61 a critical advantage. They could creep within deadly firing range before enemy pilots even suspected the impending threat. However, not all theaters of war were alike. Over Europe, for instance, tactics evolved differently. The 482nd Night Fighter Squadron crews had to adapt to entirely different tasks, primarily countering German transport aircraft and reconnaissance missions. The skies of Western Europe, saturated with both friendly and enemy aircraft, demanded unprecedented coordination with ground control centers. In this dense air traffic, where every square kilometer could hide danger, Black Widow crews had to execute intercepts requiring perfect navigation and instant reactions to changing circumstances. But how were these European lessons applied to the vastly different conditions of the Pacific? Captain Lee Kendall made precisely such a transition. Transferred to the Pacific Theater of Operations, he joined the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, bringing invaluable experience from his European campaigns. His personal aircraft, nicknamed Lady in the Dark by the ground crew, became a living embodiment of all the lessons learned during long months of night combat over France and Belgium. Kendall quickly realized that the key to a successful intercept was not speed and aggression, but rather composure and patience. He insisted on waiting for the ideal attack angle, avoiding rushed and suboptimal positions for opening fire. This seemingly simple philosophy proved vital during operations in late September around Iwo Jima. Japanese night bombers, in turn, were not new to evasion tactics, and the methods, it turned out, were gleaned from intelligence gathered on the European front. Enemy pilots executed sharp changes in altitude and course with astonishing agility, aiming to break radar contact. This forced American interceptors to reacquire the target several times during a single intercept attempt. Fortunately, the P-61's radar, with its impressive 16-mile range, provided ample room for maneuvering and reacquiring. But this only worked if crews strictly maintained discipline in their approaches. And here, another undeniable advantage of the Quad $44 came into play. Don't miss out on the most interesting parts. Stay with us and watch until the end to discover how these machines transformed night combat. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The P-61's powerful armament was the decisive trump card in these extremely challenging night intercept scenarios. Unlike many single-engine fighters that were hastily modified for night operations, the Panzer Squad 47 was originally designed as a machine with formidable firepower. Its arsenal was sufficient to reliably destroy targets in mere moments, with short but lethal bursts. 4 20mm Hispano cannons were capable of piercing the skin of even the most robust bombers at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards, giving crews a significant advantage. In addition, 4 12.7mm Browning machine guns created such a density of fire that target destruction became virtually inevitable, even if the probability of each individual bullet hitting was not particularly high. Statistical data collected by October 1944 irrefutably confirmed this effectiveness, revealing clear patterns that fully justified Northrop's original concept. Black Widow crews demonstrated significantly higher kill rates compared to crews of modified day fighters tasked with night interceptor roles. The reason lay in the P-61's unique integration of radar and weapon systems, which allowed for exceptionally precise and targeted attacks, rather than resorting to a subquote 49-rounds tactic, hoping for luck. Thus, what was initially perceived as drawbacks, the aircraft's impressive size and complex design, actually proved to be vital attributes for successful mission execution in real combat conditions. But what happened when this tactical might collided with a changing strategic reality? Even the most brilliant tactical victories could not alter the harsh strategic reality that began to take shape on the fronts. By November, German air activity over Western Europe had significantly declined, almost to nothing. Fuel shortages and catastrophic losses among experienced pilots reduced Luftwaffe night operations to an absolute minimum. A similar situation was observed in the Pacific theater. Japanese night bombings also decreased, as the overwhelming superiority of American air power systematically destroyed most enemy bases within reach of strategically important targets. As a result, the P-61 increasingly found itself without adversaries, without suitable targets to intercept. This inevitably raised new questions about the feasibility of continued production of these complex and expensive machines. The paradox became increasingly evident, practically screaming in the faces of crews who had just proven the astounding effectiveness of their aircraft in real combat. They possessed arguably the most sophisticated night fighter in the world, equipped with advanced radar systems and such firepower that enemy pilots could neither detect nor effectively counter it. However, the strategic situation itself relentlessly eliminated the very tasks for which the Black Widow was created. It turned out that victory in the night war, achieved thanks to such machines, ultimately meant one thing: night fighters were simply becoming unnecessary. How did this affect the future fate of these unique aircraft and their crews? With the arrival of spring 1945, an unexpected and paradoxical twilight of the night fighter era dawned. Captain Lee Kendall, now based on Iwo Jima, with the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, found himself in the air more and more often, performing routine patrols over vast stretches of water that had recently teemed with enemy aircraft. Japanese night bombing operations had dwindled to isolated, mostly diversionary, sorties. These missions were launched from distant bases, hundreds of miles away, and flown by pilots operating outdated equipment with minimal fuel reserves. The strategic justification that had originally warranted the P-61's development and production was rapidly vanishing, dissolving into the air along with the last enemy planes. Yet despite this, institutional inertia continued to support USA-53 DAF Ochoa operations. Northrop's production lines continued to roll out the last aircraft from a total of 706 units. Each such machine represented hundreds of thousands of dollars in manufacturing costs and thousands of hours of meticulous work by highly skilled specialists. Squadron commanders still received orders to maintain full operational readiness, although the reality was clear. Enemy air activity could no longer justify such colossal expenditures of resources and human potential. But how did this state of affairs affect the pilots themselves? This agonizing contradiction reached its peak during April operations, when entire night fighter squadrons logged dozens of hours without encountering a single enemy aircraft. Crews patrolled utterly empty skies, their sophisticated radar equipment detecting nothing more threatening than ordinary weather fronts or an occasional friendly aircraft that had deviated from standard coordination procedures. The psychological impact of such a situation on air crews was immense. Pilots and radar operators, who had diligently trained for months, honing night intercept methods to perfection, now faced a disheartening prospect. Their unique skills might never again be applied in real combat. General Vandenberg's earlier criticisms seemed to gain prophetic meaning as the war relentlessly drew to a close. Massive investments in night fighter development now appeared increasingly wasteful, if assessed purely in terms of diminishing enemy activity. However, ironically, those same critics failed or refused to acknowledge the colossal strategic impact that P-61 operations had at the peak of their effectiveness. Japanese command was forced to abandon systematic night bombing campaigns for one reason: American radar-equipped interceptors made such missions prohibitively expensive and lethally dangerous. Thus, the Pansquot 55 didn't just win battles, it won the war itself, making itself obsolete. Sometimes in history, the most unexpected solutions, those that initially seem redundant or even unnecessary, ultimately proved to be key. Have you ever felt that your unique approach or tool is underestimated, considered too specialized, too expensive? Well, the story we're about to tell is precisely about that. It's about an aircraft that many considered nothing more than a whim, but which fully justified its existence by changing the rules of night warfare. Are specialized solutions truly always redundant? Can the most unexpected tools become the key to victory? And what happens when the final act of war sounds in the most unexpected and even tragic way? We will reveal how the P-61 Black Widow, often perceived as an extravagance, not only changed the course of night operations, but also left a legacy that shaped an entire generation of fighter aviation. And we'll begin with one of the most dramatic episodes in its history, which occurred in the final hours of World War II. Stay with us and watch until the end, because even more astonishing twists in this story await us. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The ultimate confirmation of this quote 6-1 deadly effectiveness occurred in the pre-dawn hours of August 14th, 1945. Lieutenant Kendall and his crew aboard their P-61, nicknamed Zyranter 62, received coordinates for a lone contact from ground control. An unknown aircraft was rapidly approaching Okinawa from the northwest. Intelligence reports suggested that high-ranking Japanese officials might be aboard this aircraft, hurrying to Allied headquarters to discuss surrender terms. However, standard intercept procedures remained unchanged. Combat could not be initiated until the target was unequivocally identified. Kendall's radar operator established a stable contact at 14 miles, closely tracking the target as it descended through broken cloud layers towards Okinawa's airfields. The aircraft's flight profile indicated a twin-engine transport, likely a reconnaissance variant of the Mitsubishi Ki-46 Dina, modified for long-range career missions. Doctrine required visual identification before opening fire, but the pitch blackness and challenging weather conditions made such a task extremely difficult. As the Lady in the Dark closed to intercept distance, Kendall noticed that the target aircraft was displaying navigation lights and maintaining an absolutely steady course directly towards the American-controlled airfield. These factors seemingly indicated friendly intentions, but intelligence warnings about Japanese deception tactics remained in effect, keeping the crew on high alert. The decision to engage or identify rested entirely with the interceptor crew, who possessed full tactical freedom of action during night operations. At 800 yards, Kendall finally established visual contact. Before him was apparently an Imperial Japanese Navy reconnaissance aircraft, flying unescorted and making no defensive maneuvers. The target pilot seemed completely unaware of the P-61's presence, maintaining a straight and level flight, likely orienting by radio beacon. Kendall's finger rested on the firing controls as he expertly positioned his aircraft for the optimal attack angle. The burst lasted less than 3 seconds. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns unleashed their deadly hail onto the central fuselage and wing roots of the enemy aircraft. The target immediately disintegrated, its fuel tanks igniting in a brilliant fireball that momentarily illuminated the surrounding cloud formations. Debris scattered over several square miles of ocean, leaving no chance for survivors or recovery of the aircraft. Later, after the mission was completed, Intelligence analysis confirmed the bitter irony. Kendall's target was indeed an aircraft carrying Japanese military personnel who were attempting to establish contact with Allied forces to discuss surrender terms. The last aerial victory of the war eliminated potential participants in peace negotiations, becoming a symbol of tragic chance. Nevertheless, Kendall and his crew meticulously followed established procedures, demonstrating the lethal effectiveness that ensured the success of P-61 operations throughout their history. This story, full of paradoxes, only underscores the quote 67 unique role in the darkest chapters of the war. Just a few hours after this final intercept, which so dramatically concluded the era of aerial combat, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender by radio. This message was immediately intercepted by American intelligence stations across the Pacific. The announcement effectively ceased all combat operations, including the night fighter missions that justified the Black Widow's very existence. 706 aircraft, thousands of trained personnel, and millions of dollars invested in the development of this advanced machine suddenly became obsolete after a single radio broadcast. But did their value truly vanish so quickly? A statistical overview painted a surprisingly complex picture of operational success and strategic necessity. American night fighter squadrons utilizing the P-61 destroyed 127 enemy aircraft over approximately 10 months of active combat operations. In addition, they eliminated 18 V-1 cruise missiles and even one stray B-29, flying on autopilot over Iwo Jima. Additional victories remained unconfirmed due to combat, occurring over vast ocean expanses, where wreckage recovery was simply impossible. These figures represented more than just a tally of destroyed targets. They reflected the successful implementation of a revolutionary tactical doctrine. The P-61 proved that specialized night fighters could absolutely dominate in darkness thanks to superior technology and meticulous crew training. Enemy pilots, who had previously operated with impunity at night, suddenly became victims of invisible predators, equipped with radar detection systems and devastating firepower. But how did this tactical superiority impact the broader strategic picture? The legacy of this aircraft extended far beyond immediate combat results, encompassing much broader strategic implications. Japan's abandonment of systematic night bombing freed thousands of American military personnel from air defense duties, allowing them to be redeployed to offensive operations. The British adoption of American night fighter doctrine significantly influenced post-war interceptor development programs, which proved crucial during the Cold War confrontations. Perhaps most significantly, the P-61 demonstrated that specialized aircraft, designed for specific mission requirements, could achieve tactical success despite apparent shortcomings in conventional performance metrics. Speed and maneuverability were less important than radar capabilities and firepower when engagements occurred in complete darkness against unsuspecting targets. These lessons were destined to change the future of aviation, but how were they received by those who initially doubted the AR-72? The lessons learned from the Su-74 operations would influence the design of jet interceptors for decades. When Kendall landed one 75 for the last time as a combat aircraft, he realized that his E-76 plane had fully fulfilled its design purpose. Critics who questioned the P-61's value simply misunderstood the fundamental nature of night warfare, where victory belonged to those who could see without being seen and strike without warning. Sometimes what seems unnecessary turns out to be precisely what is needed when war is waged at night. The armistice abruptly ended hostilities but could not immediately resolve the complex questions regarding the P-61's ultimate value to American Air Force doctrine. In September 1945, Lieutenant Herman Ernst found himself before a War Department evaluation board tasked with assessing wartime procurement decisions, and he was to defend his aircraft's reputation. The board, composed mainly of senior officers who had never flown night fighters, approached the Black Widow program with skeptical analysis focused on cost-effectiveness and strategic necessity. And this confrontation was to determine how the legacy of this unique aircraft would be perceived in the future. How often do we judge greatness by superficial appearances, missing the true power hidden beneath a veneer of complexity? Are you familiar with the feeling of your efforts being undervalued because their true worth isn't immediately visible? Today, we delve into the story of an aircraft that faced precisely such misunderstanding. The legendary P-61 17 Night Fighter. Is speed truly everything in air combat? Can complex technology be justified when it comes to life and death? And how did one seemingly cumbersome aircraft change an entire doctrine that few had considered? You will learn why assessments of its effectiveness were so mistaken and why its R-86 became its main weapon. Despite criticism and skepticism, this aircraft didn't just win battles. It changed the very nature of air warfare, forcing the enemy to retreat, not due to losses, but out of fear of the unseen. Today, we will uncover the secrets and true power of the P-61 that revolutionized night operations. Stay with us and watch until the end, because an incredible story awaits you. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Ernst's testimony illuminated the operational realities that dry statistical reports simply couldn't capture. The recorded 127 kills were just the tip of the iceberg. Confirmed victories where wreckage was found or witness accounts were obtained. But how many dozens, if not hundreds, of additional interceptions occurred over the vast expanse of the ocean, where enemy aircraft simply vanished into the night, disappearing from radar screens after a deadly encounter with P-61 crews? The true number of downed targets forever remained a mystery, but veterans who had endured the crucible of combat well understood that many successful intercepts left no tangible evidence. Far more important was the unquantifiable psychological impact on enemy operations. Japanese night bombing raids, in essence, ceased, not due to fuel shortages or a lack of pilots, but because American interceptors, armed with the unseeing eye of radar, turned such missions into an exceedingly risky undertaking. Enemy commanders, who once regularly dispatched squadrons against Allied targets, could no longer guarantee the survival of their aircraft even beyond the initial interception zone. This was not merely a tally of downed aircraft. It was the suppression of the will to resist, a shift in the very strategy of war, which, as we will see, became a stumbling block for those who judge solely by numbers. However, the questions posed by the evaluation committee revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of night fighter doctrine and its unique operational requirements. Time and again, committee members focused on the P-61's alleged lack of speed, comparing it to agile daytime fighters, completely disregarding the fact that maximum speed loses its relevance in the absolute darkness of a night interception. They fiercely criticize the aircraft's complex design and high maintenance requirements, utterly unwilling to acknowledge the obvious. Successful night operations demanded not merely an aircraft, but a sophisticated system comprising advanced radar complexes and highly specialized crew training, which more primitive machines simply could not provide. Their perspective was rooted in yesterday, while the P-61 was already operating in tomorrow. In the face of this criticism, Jack Northrop himself, the company's founder, appeared before the committee to defend his design, philosophy, and every technical decision. The aircraft manufacturer faced the threat of a potential congressional investigation into development costs and production timelines, making his testimony vital for both corporate reputation and securing future military contracts. Northrop firmly emphasized that the P-61 had flawlessly met every single specification requirement set by the Army Air Forces during the initial procurement negotiations. The twin-boom configuration, so unusual for its time, allowed for ideal radar placement without any interference from the rotating propellers. This enabled an unprecedented detection range, unattainable by single-engine fighters. The heavy, formidable armament package ensured powerful firepower, capable of destroying targets in minimal contact time, thereby reducing its own vulnerability during attacks. Crucially, the aircraft's immense fuel capacity and exceptional structural strength allowed for extended patrol missions across vast Pacific distances, which would have been unthinkable for lighter interceptors. Before we delve deeper into the details of this unique machine and its impact on the war, we ask you to stay with us and watch until the end, as every moment of this story is filled with important revelations. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're joining us from. Northrop's technical presentation wasn't limited to defending his creation. It included a deep and detailed analysis of all alternative approaches the Army Air Forces considered during the earliest development stages. British Mosquito night fighters, despite their undeniable superior speed and extensive, proven European combat experience, disastrously lacked the flight range absolutely essential for the colossal operational distances of the Pacific. Modified P-38 Lightnings, equipped with bulky radar pods, encountered severe asymmetric loading issues, resulting in dangerously unstable handling characteristics. And single-engine fighters, forced to carry external radar units, inevitably suffered significant performance degradation, which simply nullified all their speed advantages. The manufacturers presented data undeniably demonstrated that none of the aircraft existing at that time could perform the complex night fighter mission with the same effectiveness as the P-61, which was specifically designed and built for that purpose. Thus, critics who stubbornly advocated for alternative procurement solutions failed to grasp the unique, specific requirements of night interception operations. Under these conditions, success depended primarily on unprecedented sensor capabilities and overwhelming firepower, not on conventional, boilerplate metrics of daytime performance. They looked at the stars, but failed to see the darkness where the real battle unfolded. Edward Copsall, by then a captain, also testified in support of the P-61. He provided detailed testimony regarding radar operator training and the refined tactical procedures that had proven phenomenally successful in actual combat. The SCR-720 radar system was more than just technology. It was a true revolution, demanding months of specialized, meticulous training before operators could achieve the necessary level of proficiency. That very complexity, which critics so stubbornly deemed excessive, was in fact a direct reflection of its sophisticated capabilities, enabling precise, delicate intercepts under conditions where ordinary visual target identification was utterly impossible. Copsel's operational analysis revealed with crystal clarity the intricate coordination absolutely essential between the pilot, radar operator, and ground interception control stations for every successful mission. The P-61's three-person crew configuration provided the redundancy and specialization that single-seat aircraft could never offer. Night fighter operations demanded simultaneous management of multiple systems: radar tracking, navigation, communication, and, of course, weapon systems. This was a complex set of tasks that simply exceeded the capabilities of even the most talented solo pilot, regardless of their skill level. The captain's testimony abounded with specific mission examples where flawless crew coordination was the decisive factor between triumph and failure. Multiple interception scenarios required lightning-fast decision-making based on the most subtle interpretation of radar data, while maintaining impeccable aircraft control in absolute darkness. The P-61's stable flight characteristics and comprehensive instrumentation allowed crews to execute complex maneuvers that would have been simply unthinkable in less advanced aircraft. Perhaps most compelling was Copsel's analysis of enemy countermeasures and their striking ineffectiveness against Starr's "90 tactics when applied with due skill. Desperate to escape, Japanese pilots tried numerous evasion methods: abrupt altitude changes, sudden course reversals, and various electronic countermeasures designed to break radar contact. However, none of these techniques brought them consistent success against P-61 crews, who thoroughly understood both the capabilities and limitations of their advanced equipment. They knew how to see through false screens and find their target. The Evaluation Committee's final report, despite all previous doubts, ultimately acknowledged the P-61's technical sophistication and undeniable combat effectiveness. However, as is often the case with bureaucracy, it questioned whether such a highly specialized capability justified the colossal development costs. The committee concluded that rapid changes in the war's strategic circumstances limited the aircraft's operational utility, but wisely avoided direct criticism of procurement decisions made under vastly different wartime conditions. This, in essence, myopic bureaucratic assessment completely overlooked the far broader and deeper implications of Quota 93 operations for future air defense planning. The P-61 didn't just fight, it established new doctrinal precedents and laid the groundwork for tactical procedures that profoundly influenced the development of jet interceptors throughout the nascent Cold War period. The integration of airborne radar with ground interception control systems, stringent crew specialization requirements, and, of course, all-weather interception capabilities all became standard, integral features of post-war fighter design. Moreover, the aircraft itself became a vivid testament to American industrial might's ability to produce complex weapon systems that not only matched but surpassed the best enemy equipment. The SCR-720 radar embodied technological superiority that gave Allied forces decisive advantages in highly specialized mission areas. This demonstration of seamless advanced electronics integration proved crucial for maintaining air superiority in all future conflicts, foreshadowing a new era in military aviation. Have you ever felt as if your work is undervalued, your contributions unseen? What if the most crucial victories remain behind the scenes, in the shadows, where only a few can discern their true worth? Today, we will delve into the history of an aircraft many considered superfluous, but which ultimately transformed the very nature of air combat. Our narrative will reveal how the P-61-97, despite initial skepticism, became not merely a fighter, but a true architect of modern air defense. How did this happen? What invisible burdens did those who fought in complete darkness carry? And how did this impact their future? And why did the lessons learned from Mach 98 operations become the foundation for an entire generation of jet interceptors? What seemed like a design flaw proved to be a prophecy. What was perceived as unnecessary complexity became the key to survival in a new era. We will show how an aircraft that was almost written off defined the future of aerial warfare for decades to come. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Post-war commissions focused on dry statistics and procurement efficiency often overlooked the human cost of night fighter operations. Crews who spent hundreds of hours in pitch darkness, tracking unseen enemies over hostile territory, endured immense psychological stress that official reports never acknowledged. The continuous stress of radar intercepts, weapon engagement decisions, and navigational challenges in zero visibility took its toll, an echo of which would haunt veterans for decades. Lieutenant Ernst's post-war correspondence with other Black Widow veterans vividly demonstrated the long-term impact of their shared experience. Those whose lives depended on radar screens and instrument panels developed unique perspectives on technology and human capability that fundamentally differed from those of conventional fighter pilots. They deeply understood that victory in modern warfare increasingly relied on superior sensors and information processing rather than traditional piloting skills. This unnecessary aircraft indeed transformed the nature of aerial combat, laying the foundations for electronic warfare and precision interception operations that would define military aviation throughout the jet era. Its critics were right about the speed limitations and complexity drawbacks, but profoundly mistaken about its strategic value and operational necessity. Sometimes the most crucial victories are achieved in darkness, where only specialized tools can lead to success. These unique perspectives became an invaluable asset for the future. The decades following the war confirmed the P-61's design philosophy in ways its original critics could never have foreseen. By 1950, the emergence of Soviet long-range bombers capable of delivering nuclear weapons instantly changed the requirements for American air defense. The Continental Air Defense Command desperately sought interception capabilities that could operate in all weather conditions, day or night, against targets that could approach at any altitude or speed. The lessons learned from Mashich, quote, one Pomos SAP operations became foundational doctrine for the new generation of jet interceptors entering service in the 1950s. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The Northrop F-89 Scorpion, Lockheed F-94 Starfire, and other Cold War-era night fighters embodied the design principles developed under the P-61 program. Twin-engine configurations provided a margin of safety during extended patrols over water, while sophisticated radar systems offered all-weather interception capabilities that single-engine daytime fighters could never provide. Hermann Ernst, by then an Air Force Reserve colonel, actively participated in the development and testing of these new interceptors, contributing his invaluable combat experience to tactical doctrine and crew training requirements. His insights proved invaluable during the transition from propeller-driven to jet night fighters, particularly in integrating ground control interception systems with airborne radar equipment. Ernst's analysis underscored that technological advancement alone cannot guarantee operational success. The P-61's effectiveness depended on meticulous crew training and tactical discipline, as much as it did on advanced equipment. Pilots and radar operators required hundreds of flight hours to achieve true mastery of night interception procedures. And these training investments could not be cut short by simplified aircraft systems or automated equipment. The colonel's recommendations influenced Air Defense Command training programs throughout the 1950s, establishing specialized schools for night fighter crews and standardizing interception procedures developed from World War II combat experience. These doctrinal foundations proved crucial when Soviet bomber formations began testing American air defense responses during the height of Cold War tensions. But how was this doctrine translated into specific technological solutions? Edward Kopsel, now serving as a technical consultant for radar manufacturer Westinghouse, applied his operational knowledge to develop improved interception systems for next-generation fighters. The SCR-720 radar, which equipped the P-61, represented primitive technology compared to post-war developments, but the tactical procedures Kopsel refined remained fundamentally unchanged. Kopsel's work highlighted the critical importance of human-machine interface design in complex weapon systems. The most sophisticated radar equipment was meaningless if operators couldn't quickly and accurately interpret information during high-stress combat scenarios. His experience with the P-61's crew coordination requirements influenced the development of two-seat fighters, which became the standard for interceptors throughout the jet era. The former radar operators' technical presentations to military audiences consistently emphasized the psychological factors that determined success or failure during night interception missions. Crews operating in complete darkness, relying entirely on electronic sensors and instrument displays, faced unique stresses that demanded specialized training and equipment design. These insights proved invaluable as air defense planners grappled with the challenges of interception requirements in the nuclear age. But what about the manufacture itself? How did Northrop leverage this experience? Jack Northrop's aircraft company leveraged its extensive post-110 arts experience to compete for major Cold War defense contracts, including the development of flying wing bombers and advanced interceptor designs. The engineering expertise gained during the P-61's development provided crucial advantages in radar integration, electronic system layout, and crew station design that competitors couldn't match. Northrop's post-war success with the F-89 Scorpion night fighter demonstrated the enduring relevance of the design principles established under the Black Widow program. The twin-boom configuration, heavy armament package, and sophisticated radar systems that critics once deemed unnecessary became standard features of American interceptors throughout the 1950s and 60s. The manufacturer's corporate archives preserved detailed technical documentation on the P-61 program, including test data, operational reports, and crew feedback, which proved invaluable for subsequent aircraft development. This institutional knowledge allowed Northrop to avoid repeating design flaws while simultaneously implementing lessons learned from real combat operations, thereby solidifying the Black Widow's legacy for decades to come. Have you ever felt as if time is slipping through your fingers while important tasks remain untouched? It's a familiar, sometimes paralyzing sensation when the awareness of needing to act confronts an insurmountable inertia. A persistent feeling of guilt for what's left undone, despite all good intentions and attempts, haunts many. It often feels as though an invisible, illogical force constantly prevents one from starting or finishing a task, leaving behind only frustration and missed opportunities. Many mistakenly believe the root of this problem lies in a lack of willpower or discipline. But what if the true cause runs much deeper, residing in the hidden mechanisms of our brain that create cognitive biases, pushing us towards procrastination? And what if the solution to this age-old dilemma isn't simple, but surprisingly counterintuitive, turning conventional notions of productivity on their head? You've likely tried countless time management methods, made endless to-do lists, and watched dozens of motivational videos, yet nothing has delivered the desired results. Don't despair. We've been down that same path, experiencing the same helplessness and frustration. However, years of experience and in-depth analysis have shown that there are approaches that don't just optimize your time, but fundamentally transform your relationship with tasks, converting inertia into purposeful action. In this video, we won't just unveil methods, but 3 revolutionary principles that will allow you to break free from the vicious cycle of procrastination once and for all, making your productivity not just higher, but qualitatively different. We will delve into how to stop endless planning and finally start acting, whether the habit of putting things off until tomorrow can be completely eradicated, or if it can merely be managed, and what hidden brain mechanisms compel us to procrastinate, and most importantly, how to effectively outsmart them. The first of these principles, often undeservedly overlooked, can be your initial step towards a new, effective reality. So stay with us and watch until the end, because every piece of advice, every strategy presented here could be the very key that unlocks the door to your new productive life. We would be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We're very interested to learn the geography of our viewers and foster our community. So, the first principle we'll explore, which forms the foundation of any successful anti-procrastination strategy, is called the small steps technique. Its essence is simple, yet its effect is profoundly transformative. Any task, no matter how daunting or extensive, can be successfully completed if broken down into tiny, barely perceptible actions. The psychological resistance that arises when faced with a colossal amount of work significantly diminishes when your goal isn't write a book, but rather write the first sentence or open the document. This approach doesn't just make starting easier, it creates a continuous chain of micro-victories, each reinforcing your motivation and confidence. Research shows that the feeling of progress, even minimal, is a powerful stimulus for continued activity. This isn't merely a trick to fool your brain. It's a fundamental understanding of how it operates, utilizing natural reward mechanisms to maintain momentum. Applying this principle allows you to bypass the traps of perfectionism and fear of failure, focusing on an achievable action rather than an ideal final outcome. We will delve deeper into these methods, revealing their essence and practical application in daily life. Stay with us and watch until the end, for the true power of these strategies, capable of transforming your approach to tasks, lies precisely in their details. We would be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, don't forget to share in the comments which corner of the world you're joining us from. This principle not only helps you start, but also paves the way for the next even more powerful tool, which allows you to instantly overcome inertia and begin a task, even if it seems unappealing. The second fundamental principle, complementing the small steps technique, is the 2-minute rule. Its simplicity is deceptive, and its effectiveness has been proven by time and the experience of thousands who have overcome chronic procrastination. The idea is straightforward. If an action takes less than 2 minutes, you should do it immediately, without delay. This could be replying to an email, washing dishes after a meal, making your bed, or making a quick phone call. By applying this rule, you not only eliminate numerous small tasks that accumulate and create a sense of chaos, but you also form a powerful habit of immediate action. The psychological barrier to starting work is often linked not to the task's volume itself, but to the decision-making process of beginning it. The 2-minute rule eliminates this barrier, transforming decision-making into an automatic reflex. It teaches your brain to instantly transition from thought to action, bypassing the phase of resistance and postponement. This approach is particularly valuable because it doesn't require significant willpower. It simply reprograms your reaction to small tasks, preventing them from escalating into larger, overwhelming problems. Mastering this principle is a critically important step toward creating a continuous flow of productivity, where even the most minor actions contribute to overall progress. This method works perfectly in conjunction with the first, allowing you not only to break down large tasks, but also to instantly handle those that don't require lengthy involvement. However, for tasks that demand more time and concentration yet still evoke internal resistance, there's a third, sometimes unexpected but highly effective approach that we will now explore. The third, yet equally significant principle capable of fundamentally changing your approach to complex and unpleasant tasks is the public commitment and reward principle. Human psychology dictates that commitments made to others or even to oneself, but reinforced by a clear system of incentives, possess far greater power than mere internal intentions. The essence of this principle lies in creating external levers of pressure and motivation. This could involve publicly declaring your goals on social media, arranging mutual accountability with a friend, or even establishing a system of self-reward and self-punishment where completing a task earns you something desired, while failing to do so means losing something valuable. This method leverages our natural need for consistency and our drive to avoid negative consequences. Research in behavioral economics indicates that people are far more motivated to avoid a loss than to gain an equivalent benefit. Thus, creating a contract with yourself where failing to complete a task incurs tangible penalties can become a powerful catalyst. This is more than just playing with motivation. It's a strategic use of our innate psychology to create conditions where procrastination becomes less appealing than action. These three principles, the small steps technique, the 2-minute rule, and the public commitment and reward principle, are not isolated methods, but an interconnected system capable of transforming your approach to productivity. By applying them in combination, you will not only learn to start and complete tasks, but also cultivate a new, proactive mindset. From now on, the night belongs to those who possess not only the desire, but also the effective tools to overcome inertia, and you will convincingly prove this principle through your new, productive life.